Welcome back, Boise Entrepreneur Week. Still going strong, day 3. I have with me one of our volunteers, Anthony. Welcome to the show. Anthony's with Anthony Fisher Shallat.
Fisher Hudson Shallat.
Fisher Hudson Shallat. Thank you. Wow.
Not a salad, but a law firm.
We were talking about it could be a name of a salad on a menu somewhere.
Sure.
Shallot dressing, that is. Fisher Hudson Shallat. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries.
Like I said, day 3, long day. But I have you here as first and foremost as a volunteer of BEW.
Yeah.
So many of you don't know what goes on behind the scenes in putting on an event like this. And Anthony will kind of tell us firsthand.
Sure.
So first of all, like, why did you join the volunteerism effort?
So last year, I wanted to participate in Boise Startup Week, basically just as an observer, and I did. And I watched the entire presentation last week, and I was enthralled. It was super cool. You guys did a great job, and I wanted to get more involved in the ecosystem. So I decided to volunteer, and I picked the social committee. And we were discussing, planning lots of different types of events, and then you guys made your pivot. But it was pretty interesting getting a perspective of what might happen on a normal year.
So let's take a step back. So basically, we hooked you with our content. You thought it was cool. You wanted to be part of it.
Yep.
That's great. And then, of the various committees, the social committee was originally, and when I say originally, this is before the pivot to a hybrid event.
Yes.
For those of you who don't know, we did plan on having a full-on in-person event, hosting about 6,000 people throughout this week. So the social committee was primarily in charge of...
So we were going to be planning maybe about 4 or 5 different types of breakout events. So of course the block party was going to be on the menu, but we were trying to come up with different ways people can kind of meet each other during the week. And we batted around a lot of fun ideas. There's paddleboarding, there was a historic walking tour. And me and you got into that a little bit, and that was interesting.
Your proposals were grounded in a lot of community building, I remember.
Sure. Well, I'm from Boise, and I used to serve on the Historic Preservation Commission for the city of Boise. And I always think it's fascinating, the intersection of old Boise and, I guess, new Boise, right?
So you were born and raised here?
Born and raised in Boise. I went to college in San Diego. And then I worked in D.C. for a little bit, and I came back here and I got my law degree.
So there was one event that is my personal favorite event because I get to hurt people without getting into trouble.
Sure.
And that was dodgeball.
Yeah, I was looking forward to that.
Yeah, I think dodgeball really was the reason most of the people signed up for the social committee because they thought they get to plan that event. Couldn't have it this year. Hopefully next year.
Yeah, when I first heard, that we decided to pivot, I was a little disappointed, but then I remembered, the reason I wanted to get involved in the first place was just observing and participating in the virtual event last year. I've been watching the event this entire week. I went to the block party yesterday, and I went to, meeting some people who were part of the pitch committee and the pitch competition yesterday. And so it's been a great event so far. So kudos to you and everyone else.
Thank you. Actually, right back at you.
Thanks.
Seriously, we couldn't put this on without... I always say the leadership team at BEW is an engine, and our volunteers are the fuel.
Sure.
Without the fuel, we won't get anywhere. And so right back at you, Anthony. Let's talk about your firm. Fisher Hudson Shallat this time.
That's right.
Let's tell me a little bit about sort of the origin story and what kind of areas of law that you focus on.
So the origin story is I graduated from law school and I took a job as a litigation attorney with a local firm here. And I did that for 4 years, and I decided that it was time for me to kind of make a change. And so I started collaborating with 2 other attorneys I knew. There's Vaughn Fisher and Jeremiah Hudson, and we formed Fisher Hudson Shallat. They're litigation attorneys, but I went in with a specific focus to really get into franchise law and startup law, business guidance, outside general counsel services, but basically identifying the pain points where I can help a business as they grow.
Where did that impetus come from? I mean, I'm not a lawyer whatsoever. I did say at a Holiday Inn at some point. Good one, huh? But what's sort of the impetus for a lawyer? And I think of litigation lawyers. You go to court, you represent people, you defend people. You're talking to a judge. that's very non-entrepreneurial, just at a very
Right,
high
you're
level.
right.
So help me understand where that impetus came from. You talked about identifying problems and gaps and going after that. Is that just part of kind of your personality, or did you?
I played around with different types of careers. I worked in politics, and I didn't find that very gratifying. I took a job, and I pretty much just started to represent people who were being sued or to sue people because really didn't know what else to do. I found a lot of fun things about that. It's competitive. Lawyers are always competitive by nature. It's intellectually stimulating. But unfortunately, it's just so adversarial by nature that I wanted to make a change where I'm not breaking down a business, but I'm building people up. And I wanted something to be really proud of at the end of the day. And I didn't want to have, that types of adversarial relationships.
Let's pick on that a little bit. So what is the role of a law firm or a lawyer to help build a business up? Like you said, I think most people associate, well, if I have to call my lawyer,
Sure.
I'm either in trouble or I'm going to get someone else in trouble. But you're offering a whole different perspective here. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, I like offering a different perspective because it doesn't have to be, a scary conversation. I mean, we can have, a conversation about your business, what you're trying to achieve, how to achieve it. But I think that certainty is good in business. And of course, with entrepreneurs, there's a lot of ambiguity. But certainty, you should try to strive for that as you're trying to grow your business, whether that's certainty with your employees, certainty with your business partners, certainty with your vendors, or just feeling comfortable that all your contracts and relationships, there's some clarity with it. So that's essentially the way I describe and I try to counsel my clients is having some sort of certainty, at least when it comes to the legal aspect, because there's so many things competing for an entrepreneur's attention every day, where that's one thing where you can at least feel a little bit secure that you're doing things the right way.
Sounds like, how they say, control the things you can.
Absolutely.
And it sounds like certainty is an element of control that you can instill in a business, and then you can
Yes.
let the rest be chaotic and ambiguous. But where you can instill certainty is what you're saying.
Absolutely, and there's a lot that goes into that. It's important to have certainty when you create your documents, but also just brands, logo, intellectual property, protecting that, making sure that you have something that is not going to be infringed upon. But then when it comes down to actually gaining some traction and getting some revenue in the door, you're going to be working with lots of different third parties and entities and making sure that you're set up in the best possible position and both sides of a transaction understand what's trying to be accomplished.
Let's open up the can of the franchise focus.
Sure.
So I understand you're a general counsel at Fran Metrics.
Yes.
Tell us about them a little bit.
So Fran Metrics is a franchise consulting service, and they're also a SaaS company. And I actually live at a condo complex close to here, and I met the founder of Fran Metrics when he was walking his dog, and we kind of struck up a conversation.
Boise for you, don't you love it?
Absolutely. And we became friends, and about 3 or 4 months into our friendship, I asked him what he did. And he said he was a franchise consultant. And he said that he was really unsatisfied with his legal counsel at the time, and so I started to learn about franchise law from him, and we basically formed a partnership, and now I serve as his general counsel in addition to being a partner on my law firm.
So was it that relationship that then got you kind of on the, let's call it the franchise track?
Yes, exactly. So as I mentioned, I founded Fisher Hudson Shallat specifically to focus on helping growing businesses, whether it was startups or small businesses, but I didn't know a lot about franchises. I thought, the McDonald's, the Chick-fil-A.
Same.
But through that relationship, he educated me a lot about, what a franchise is, and I helped him with the legal aspects of making sure franchises were set up correctly.
Let's talk about franchises sort of through an entrepreneurial lens. So I know some folks that run franchises, and my assumption, not knowing much about franchises, honestly, was always, well, you're getting everything from corporate headquarters.
Yes.
The marketing materials are done, your menu is done, your branding is done, all your contracts are in place. You're kind of just executing what they set you up for.
Yes.
And then my parents-in-law, they ran a franchise, Brain Balance Achievement Center, and I learned firsthand that that's not at all. It takes an entrepreneurial mindset.
It does.
So let's talk about, there's this misperception maybe of franchises. and what it takes to make them successful?
So we work primarily with franchisors, but I also represent franchisees. Franchisors is the corporate, formation. They're the people with the idea of what the business should be. But there are a few key benefits, I guess, to creating a franchise.
What are those?
One of them is, you're able to expand nationally very quickly instead of having to open up kind of a brick and mortar store with your own capital or, seeking venture capitalists to invest in your company. You can go ahead and partner with people in different markets right away. So if someone here, wanted to open up a restaurant, perhaps in Florida, instead of having to go out there, scout the location, sign a lease, all that, if they want to be a franchise, then they have this business model which has been proven to be successful, and they go out and they look for people in Florida who perhaps want to own a business but don't really know where to start, or perhaps they don't want to go through that creative process of creating that business. So it matches people who are super creative and who have written things down to a T with people who are looking for an opportunity to own a business, but perhaps don't want to go through the headache of worrying about compliance, brand creation, setting up, the ins and outs, operating manuals. And so it's really interesting partnership and match between a franchisor and a franchisee, because they're both, successful entrepreneurs, but someone's, doing all the creative part of it, all the legal part of it. The other person is getting something handed to them, and they just got to run the business, right?
Got to execute, basically, right?
Exactly.
You're almost describing like a COO role in certain ways. So are there types or personality types that are a good fit for franchises, whereas others aren't, or is that something I just totally made up?
No, you're 100% right. I would not be a good franchisee. I'm too much of a maverick, and I like to kind of do things my own way, and so I would be a bad franchisee. But perhaps if you you want to start something and you're not sure where to start, there's lots of different options for franchisees.
I certainly have noticed an uptick of emails and LinkedIn messages from all kinds of places in the United States. Hey, open up a franchise.
Sure.
There's even firms out there that represent, a palette of different franchises, and they're almost reps, and it's a middleman.
Sure.
Hey, what kind of franchise do you like? Is it a restaurant? Is it a tire shop? Is there like a resurgence in the States when it comes to franchises? Because like you said earlier, I typically associate them with the McDonald's.
Yeah, and it's fast food services, it's gyms, it's actually nail salons, personal trainers, home care, contractors. It's a $700 billion industry, and it's growing, at a really high pace. The cool thing about Fran Metrics is instead of having to hire an attorney and pay, literally close to $100,000 in legal fees, Fran Metrics essentially turns existing businesses who've got a great concept and helps them become franchises, either through operation manuals, franchise agreements, franchise disclosure documents, but essentially able to turn existing business into a franchise.
So when it comes to your clients who are potential franchisees, what are some of the cons or drawbacks that you would suggest that they consider before starting a franchise, as opposed to having their own business?
So usually when there's some sort of business negotiation or people are deciding whether or not to do business together, there's usually a lot of equity on each side. With a franchisor, the franchisor essentially has all the cards, and the franchisee has to play by their rules. So if you're someone who is a rule follower, it might be great, because you go ahead and you're unsure of a certain situation, open up your franchise agreement, open up your operations manual. This is it. This is how long you fry the chicken or whatever it is. If you're someone who gets uncomfortable, maybe you like to follow rules so much, or you want to do things a certain way, and you might say, well, why do we have to fry the chicken for 2 minutes, when some people like it extra crispy? Then I would not suggest being a franchisee.
And I assume, because knowing from my parents-in-law business, there's a certain percentage of revenue that they have to give back.
Sure.
Well, not they have to, they agree to give back to the mothership. So there's a trade-off there, but you get something in return, right?
Yes, there is a trade-off, and there's a trade-off for the franchisor too. The franchisor, they're probably going to be making less money if they're going to go ahead and partner with franchises. but they do make a royalty percentage. So it's not as profitable as going ahead and opening up your own business. In a different state, or expanding. You're gonna sacrifice from those profits, but at the same time you're gonna have a larger presence, and the franchisee is gonna be more vested in your business. Instead of just hiring an employee who may be working a 9 to 5 and just getting a paycheck, franchisee is a business owner, so they want to succeed, and you should want your franchises to succeed too, because they're your business partners, right?
Yeah, I see that relationship now a little clearer with, as a franchisee, you're probably really focused on kicking off cash flow because those will become your earnings. Very cool. Hey, Anthony, thank you for kind of peeling the onion with us a little bit on the franchise model. Huge industry. I was not aware, other than, obviously being surrounded by franchises here. And I really want to thank you again personally for all the work you did for Boise Entrepreneur Week. Again, we couldn't have done it without you. I'm so glad you joined. I hope you join again next year.
Absolutely.
I enjoyed working with you. And on that note, October is Cybersecurity Awareness Month. Kicking off our next talk is Eric Herring from Vinyl. Vinyl is a platinum sponsor and another key element to making Boise Entrepreneur Week happen. We have Nick Krabs as my fellow co-chair. Nicole Harris-Roberts is running marketing. Mark Doubleday is behind the camera and the master of all production here. But the next talk is called The War of the Flea, Ransomware in 2021. Pretty cool title. Again, Eric Herrick from Vinyl. Thank you so much. But before we do, a word from our sponsors.